That's where the real magic is in bladesmithing. It's all in the heat treat. The magical qualities that you instill in hammering are questionable. The heat treat might take away all of it. There's a lot of arguments over that, over the qualities of the forged blade. But I think most of it, although there might be some that you instill by forging, I think most of it is put into the knife during the heat treatment process. Okay, this is the back I'm working on, just to keep that tip going down. Getting a little crusty on me. You can also wet your anvil and wet your hammer, and it's known as wet forging, and that'll release some of the scale off the side of the blade. I don't like it because it cools the steel off so quick that I can't get anything done. And the little pits and blemishes on a hammer finished blade, to me, is just character. You know, it's not crudeness to me. It shows what the smith has been able to do with his hammer and the skill in his arm instead of what he can do with a machine. So I like leaving mine with a hammer finish just to show what I can do with my hammer as opposed to what I can do with a grinder. You can start to see I'm getting a ridge going, barely right there. And I just keep doing that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth till I get it nice and crisp. You beat it in from this way a little bit, and you beat it in from that way, and you're creating, you're pushing the steel up into a ridge in the middle, which seems to be a stronger geometry in my mind, having a slightly tapered back, a tapered edge, and having all the meat or the spine of the blade running like 2/3 of the way up. Seems a lot stronger in my mind.
So the only rules in art are the rules that the artist imposes on himself.
Right.
Well, I've imposed the rules of working without gas and without electricity, and that has caused me or enabled me to become more intimate with my work.
The thinner the blade gets, the more delicate that edge becomes. You don't want to burn it. That's the only real danger to the steel is when you're forging on charcoal is getting it too hot and burning the steel. If you burn it, it's wasted. It's not reclaimable. You either have to grind it all off or start over. So when you're getting close to the finished edge, you slow way down. You keep the heats at a little bit less of a heat going on there. See, I've got more of a dull red than what I had before. You can see I've got a ridge going through there. It's kind of hard to see, but under there somewhere there's a ridge. Kept the nose down, so I've got a drop point. This area here is a choil, and I'll be filing on it, and it's ready now to be annealed. The next process is to anneal it, to soften it, to get all the stress out of it. This will put it in the softest state that I can get it in, so now I can file on it, fit up my guard, get the tang exactly the right length for the handle. If I leave it a little long, I can either hot cut or hacksaw some of it off to shape. Now, any time I need to do any kind of filing or sanding or anything, it's at its softest state after it comes out of the annealing process. It's the time to do it, and then I can heat treat, because after heat treatment it'll be too hard to really do any kind of file work or anything to it. This buoy I made is out of the same half-ton 57 Dodge leaf spring that I was working with earlier. And it's the same type of design to where I've tapered the back some and then beveled to the edge. So I have a ridge going down it, and that is the thickest part of the blade. And I've left a hammer finish on it. And this guard is made out of mild steel, just 1018. You can find tons of it at the salvage yard. I guess this is sort of called a trailing tip. where the tip kind of slightly goes up above the back would be a term that they use for describing this style of knife. This area here is the choil. It's really where the edge begins. It's the place where sharpening would start. This area here is called the ricasso. Usually that's where you'd have the name. I stamp mine over here, but normally they'll put the name right on the ricasso part. I've got a copper spacer, and this is a hidden tang construction. So the tang of the blade goes through the guard, through the spacers, through the handle material, out the back of the butt cap, to where you can see the tang itself has been peened over on the butt cap. So when I'm assembling the knife, the guard's been soldered. I put all the pieces together and then compress it by ball peening, hammering on the tang, and it mushrooms it out and holds the whole thing very securely together. There's no pins in it. There hasn't been any drilling involved. I did drill a pin that goes through this guard for extra strength, and I just use a nail. You know, I drilled the hole first, put a nail in as a pin. You beat on it and peen it over, and it swells up inside the hole to where you cannot see where that pin is anymore. So it becomes a very, very strong and lightweight tool when you're finished, because even though it's not one piece, it balances out and acts as one piece with that tang running through it, everything pinned together, everything compressed. It's all sealed up, and a knife like this will last generations. The blade now is completely forged to its final shape. It's been annealed, slow annealed in the forge, in the ashes and the coals, and it's as soft as I can get it now at this stage. So I've done little file work here and there, cleaned up my choil a little bit with a file. Less than 5% of the material has been removed so far due to stock removal by using files. I'm going to fit a handle up to it and get everything nice and square the way I like it while it's still soft, and then I'm going to heat treat it. I use a little chunk of flagstone or sandstone just to take off the major stubborn spots of scale. And you can see the edge and the ridge starting to pop through all the scale. So now I can just keep going, a little sandpaper, a rock, whatever it takes to get all the little stubborn scale and stuff off. You clean it as much as you want to at this stage, and to get the rest of this stubborn scale off, you can soak it in white vinegar. White vinegar will pop all the scale off, but won't hurt the steel. It's about the easiest way to get the scale off that I've seen. You can sand on this for hours. It's real stubborn stuff, but the white vinegar will pop it right off in a matter of hours.
You can really pound with a buoy made out of 5160. It's got good flex. You can get a good hard edge with it. So right now, that's what my favorite steel is.
So close. Well, then I'll swipe it just one too many times and it'll be all wiggling around. Yeah. I'm going to heat this blade up to non-magnetic, nice and even. And then I'm going to quench it in that tank over there that's got automatic transmission fluid in it. And that's the hardening process. It's already been annealed. There's 3 basic steps to the heat treating process: annealing, quenching or hardening, and tempering. Annealing, which we've already done, it's to soften the metal, to get it all the stress out of it that we've hammered into it. Now we're going to go to the quenching or hardening step. I heat the blade back up to non-magnetic, nice and even, and I quench it in the automatic transmission fluid. And then after that, we'll temper it. So right now, I'm just bringing it up to a nice, even, non-magnetic heat. Bring it up to a nice, even heat, and keep checking it with your magnet. It's non-magnetic. then you're at the critical temperature. As long as it's nice and even, you're ready to quench. Now, this is just automatic transmission fluid, the cheap stuff. I like it because it has a flash point just above critical temperature, so if you get it too hot, it'll catch on fire, and you know you've didn't do the heat treating as well as you could have, so you can start over with annealing. I just leave it in there till it gets pretty cool. Now it should be fully hardened. I'll check this with a file along the edge to see if the file skates across the edge, and that'll tell me if it's gotten fully hardened or if there's any soft spots or what. Okay. Look straight, didn't warp. So now I'll just let it cool to air temperature, and it'll be ready to be tempered. Throw it in the dirt a little bit, get all the automatic transmission fluid off. And that's the quenching cycle. I clean it off real nice so I can see the tempering colors for the next step. You don't have to get it real clean, just good enough so you can see the bare metal so the colors will show up. So I make a groove in the earth, just a shallow little groove with a old beat up hatchet, and set my edge down into it. Put a little bit of loose stuff in there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it with some real thick, heavy-ended tongs that are heated up in the forge, and I'm going to pinch the back with these hot tongs and temper the back and pull it up a little bit as I do that and let the heat travel down towards the edge. And I'll leave it in the dirt when it gets too hot in a spot to suck the heat out of it so it won't get too soft. So now all I have to do is heat up the tongs, and then I'll grab the back. That thing's so thick it takes a while to heat up. You can barely see a straw color starting to come down it. You can see the back has turned a little blue. Works good. So I'm getting a blue in the back, and it's traveling down to like a light straw to maybe a I like to get the tip just a little bit because it's usually the weakest part of the blade. People don't realize how much pressure you can exert on just the very tip. So if you temper that a little softer, it'll hold up to abuse a lot better. You can do the same job with like a big chunk of steel or copper or whatever. All it is just something really hot that you're touching the back with. Okay, now the blade's done. It's finished. It's everything except for the sharpening, and we'll save that for the very last. Now for the handle, I've got a piece of walnut that's been burned and filed and drilled through and everything, and then with a wood rasp, I've just kind of given it a basic shape so far. And then I've got a copper cap that goes on the end that'll snug on up there and everything when I do the final assembly. And then the tang goes all the way through that. And with a little bit of pressure,
and a hand.
but anyway, I'll leave it a little bit to where it can be, when the final assembly, and I'll have the primitive epoxy in it and everything, I can snug it on up there so it's a real nice tight fit up against all this copper. And then I'm going to put a copper butt cap on the end, and I need to flare this out some more and make it thinner, and I'm going to mushroom it out around the edge so that it'll make a cap also. And then I'll file off the back side of the mushroom that I've created on the edge, so all you have is like a little domed cap on the end, and then I can peen the tang over. So right now I'm going to go ahead and glue most of this with some primitive epoxy. I'm going to heat up some pinyon pine pitch and deer dung as for an epoxy, and I'll just get this part on there so it's nice and stable, and then I can do the rest of my rasping and everything and finish my butt cap and put it on. So next is the epoxy. Okay, now I go to the vise and tap it on in there.
Awesome.
I use a little WD-40 to get all the pine pitch and deer dung solution, primitive epoxy, whatever, off of the blade and kind of clean it up. It's pretty tough stuff and creates a great seal. Getting an even amount of space around the whole handle area with this copper, and I'm going to leave like a little 1/8 inch or whatever sticking out so I can mushroom it over to make a cap. but it's got to be the equal amount all the way around so that the mushroom would be the same all the way around. I'm just mushrooming over the edge. I've got it where there's a little lip sticking out all the way around, and I'm going to mushroom it over so it'll create like a little cap, and then I'll file off the mushroom part around this outside. Using the ball peen hammer to mushroom over the end of the tang so it holds everything on there. The tang has been peened over just to hold everything in place. Now I can go ahead and file this little lip I've got off and round it over a little bit, make it a little prettier, clean it up a little, and then I'll clean up around this edge too with a different hammer. Filing off the outer lip that I've mushroomed over. I'm just peening over the inside lip to match it up to the wood, and then I'll clean it up, sand the handle a little bit. That ought to be pretty much done except for sharpening.
There goes another piece, man. Ow! Oh yeah, play that harp. God is made. That's nobody for nothing. I can't get it on my own. You don't like the way I'm living. You just leave long hair, cut your ball on.
There you go, Mary. There's a bead right there.
Lay around in the shade, kinda like my old blue.
As far as I know, there's only a few professional knife makers that are women in the industry. Marion, my wife, has been making them off and on now for about 8 years. And she's professional sometimes, and then she goes back to work doing something else until she gets it all in her head the way her vision needs to be, and then she'll go back into it full time. Not nearly as many women involved in the knife making industry. It seems like there should be.
I made my first knife in 1994. I did it full time for about 1.5 years, but mainly I'm just doing it part time now. I've gotten into making jewelry too. This is an idea that I had for making jewelry, where if I could change the angle of the anvil whichever way I needed. If I wanted to use say copper sheet or any kind of material where I wanted something domed, I'd use it on here, and you know, hammer on here like this. I use a nail to get it good and tight in there. I can just take it out real easy, just like that. If I don't need that there, and it's to get it out of the way. This one's in permanently. It just it's there for good. That one here. This one is good, you know, if you're forging hot steel or copper, whatever. This part of this stand is a cast iron pipe, and it's got adobe attached onto the outside of it. It's domed inside with the bowling ball sitting down inside it, so it can swivel around in any position I need it to be in. These are two of the